Mike Murray.
This is SNL.
SNL
By the numbers.
Numbers.
Styles still sparkles. Double duty for Pootie. Aerial tramway. There's the opening haiku for you. I am your host, Mike Murray, and this is SNL By The Numbers, the home of SNL Stats. Tonight we are covering episode 1003 of SNL with host and musical guest Harry Styles. This podcast is a presentation of LateNighter.com. Back with me, of course, is my day one. It's Schneider and Murray. We're back. How are you? Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Aerial tramway.
There it is.
Yes, we're back, Mike. Happy to be with you, buddy. Thanks for having me.
What'd you do for St. Patty's Day? Anything?
Oh, nothing. When it falls on a weekend, I feel like there's a tendency to go to a bar. But midweek, St. Patty's Day, I feel like haven't done something since the college days ish.
Well, you just observe it on the Saturday before, you know?
Yes. Yeah. It's very cold here still. So I feel like I'm not into the whole, I don't have the same energy, the same inspiration to go out and party. But what did you do?
Oh, I mean, I'm just still on the double kid parental leave right now. So just partied at home. But it was great. I have a question for you.
Okay.
Is this the best time ever to have an SNL podcast? Thinking about from season 4 now.
I thought you were going to say, is this the best time ever to have a kid? Is this the best time ever to have an SNL podcast? I mean, I kind of think so. I mean, probably maybe you can argue last year because you're there for the 50th and who knows if there's going to be a 100th. But I think the, SNL becoming a global sport makes it more fun to podcast.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the way we came into this. Of course, me and you together from season 46 with the COVID year and an election and, new cast members every year. And then going into 50, all that lead up, having the 50th, and then having this whole cast almost turnover, new era. And now this SNL UK. And we got Jack Black and the Five Timers Club coming up. Just a lot of exciting things happening. So just being a little reflective now that I'm seeing you for the first time in a while.
Yeah, it's great to be with you. I mean, I think I sort of thought, I guess I'll compare this to another show that I know you and I both really love, which is Survivor, which is sometimes they do these big epic all-star seasons where they bring back all these contestants. And it's a very exciting thing. And everyone who's ever watched the show comes back to watch it. And they're doing that right now with Survivor 50. But the season after that is always a huge letdown. And that's not this at all. So I wasn't coming into the season expecting it to be a letdown, but I am pleasantly surprised with how exciting this season is, given how monumental last season was. They really did a great job of carrying that momentum, making things feel fresh, not letting us down with host bookings, being creative. It feels inspired.
Definitely. And I feel like we would have given them a little leeway if there was a little bit of a 50 hangover. I think we kind of prepared for that, especially with the departures we had and people getting their footing with a big rookie class. And they haven't missed a beat, in my opinion. I think this season we've talked about stat-wise has been super exciting. But just every week, it's hard to find something that you don't like. It's really been consistent. And I thought this run of 3, Connor Story, Gosling, and Harry Styles was all solid. So what did you think about the run overall?
Yeah, I think it was great. I think I could understand that there is a certain segment of the fandom who wouldn't love this run of 3 because it's a lot of sort of pandering to the audience of the hosts. So, when you get Connor, obviously the heated rivalry fans are just the army comes to the show. With Gosling, you're really theming the show around the brand of host that he is. And then with Harry Styles, you sort of didn't use him to his full capacity, but still the show was he's doing double duty. So he can't help but be the main storyline of the evening. So I do feel like there's a lot of people who don't love that and would love to just see Connor Story, Ryan Gosling, and Harry Styles show up in a typical living room with a family or dinner table with a family and do a slice of lifestyle sketch. So I think there's a place for these types of shows in a season among other just regular hosts that maybe don't have that same type of following. But for the show to stay relevant, you have to have the right mix of both. So I think it was just a very exciting month.
How would you rank those three, Story, Gosling, Styles?
I think I would go Gosling, Story, Styles.
I think I would agree with that. As far as like top to bottom, everything included. I probably had I had no expectations for Story, so they were exceeded, and I thought it was good. Gosling, I was like kind of hesitant because I don't want to get my hopes up for some epic all-time episode, but I've liked all his previous ones. And then Harry Styles, I probably had higher expectations that were like a little short, but almost met because I loved his 2019 episode. So I think that kind of shakes out correctly.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that any of them like reached the low lows of a couple of the episodes this season.
No.
But yeah, like I really felt like we were just like hit after hit in the fall, and then there's been some really, really good episodes, and then some like mid episodes, I'd say, in the spring. So overall, like this is a great season of the show. Is it going to go down as a top 5 season, a top 10 season? I'm not sure. I think you need time and perspective for something like that. But like, is this an upper half season? No doubt. I could say that 15 episodes into this, like 3/4 of the way, definitely an upper half season, a top 25 season, probably a top 20 season.
I'd agree with that. I'd have to like really look at, top 10, top 20, but definitely upper half, I think easily, even 15 in. And this is a question that I ask because Jon comes on this podcast usually once a run at the end, and we look back at that run and the whole season at large. But I usually ask this question of, does the season have an identity? What is the storyline? Because those things usually never are what we thought they were going to be going in. They change. It's very fluid and malleable as the weeks go on. But I'm going to give my take right now. I think the storyline has been the cast, which is way more fun. I mean, last year's obvious storyline, it was season 50. It was the cameos. It was election year. It was the celebration itself. This one, I think, has been, how is Marcelo rising? Ashley Padilla is literally having the greatest featured player season of all time. Veronica Slawakowska is having one of the best rookie years of all time. We have input from Jeremy Culhane, from Tommy Brendan once in a while, and what's going on with Cam. Like, there's a lot of those storylines that make a show like this so much fun. So let's look at the screen time of this week. And if you think of another storyline, hit me up.
I'm sure we're going to be talking through all of them throughout the night here, but let's go through our screen time from season 51, episode 15. So Harry Styles, double duty, 10 segments throughout the night, 25 minutes and 51 seconds of screen time. Mike, how does that compare to Sabrina Carpenter from what we got earlier this season?
Sabrina was huge. So let me take a look at that one.
Yeah, that's interesting because, obviously double duty screen time.
31:44 was Sabrina's.
Wow.
It's the highest of the season. Easily.
You can kind of feel it. Like, if you would have told me, it's tough. I think if you would have told me that Harry Styles and Sabrina Carpenter would be our 2 double duty hosts this season, and maybe we'll get one more, I may have said like, hey, Sabrina would have less screen time because I feel like they'd want to push Harry out, and Sabrina's like naturally charismatic, and she's been at the show. I don't know. That's a tough one, but I think I think that ultimately Sabrina has fit in with this cast better than Harry ended up fitting in with this cast this week.
Definitely. And I was talking to Bill Kenny last week and just saying that I thought the season 45 Harry Styles was fantastic. Like, I still can remember sketches from that episode, even with not having watched it in a long time. His screen time in that one with music was 26:39 versus this week 25:51. But I do like to look at that number without music for double duty and non-double duty hosts. So in 2019, he had 21 minutes 5, and this one he had 19:09. So in either metric, he definitely went down. The overall doesn't look as harsh, but it's like a full 2 minutes without the music that you could really look at.
It really matters, though. I really feel for double duty hosts when they come back. We've talked about this on the roundtable. Like, there was only 10 to 12 of them. If they're going down in screen time, and it's just a couple minutes, but they're going down, like, something isn't right here. Like, I feel like they should have leaned on Harry more, but maybe they didn't trust him. So like, something during the week was like, hey, we're not going to write around this guy who maybe won't be able to handle the workload of some other double duty host. But anyways, we could continue to talk about that. Let's go through the cast screen time from the week. So Marcelo leading the night. So he was our MVP on Monday, also led the numbers, 13 minutes and 24 seconds of screen time, 5 segments for Marcelo, 5 for Mikey Day as well, and 13 minutes and 4 seconds of screen time. So just under him. Colin Jost in the cold open and on update, 8 minutes and 53 seconds of screen time. Kenan Thompson, 5 segments, a pseudo vintage night for Kenan, 7 minutes and 38 seconds, broke out an old character and a new character. Ashley Padilla continues her domination, 7 minutes and 21 seconds of screen time, 4 segments for her, 4 for Sarah, 6 minutes and a second, same exact time as Jane Wickline. We have a tie here between Sarah and Jane, both in 4 segments of the night. So same stat line for the two of them. James Austin Johnson, 5 segments, 5:36. Jeremy Colhane, 4 segments, a great time on update, 5:25. Chloe Feynman, just 3 segments and 5:21. So a little bit of a slump for Chloe in a way compared to what we got before. Veronica, 5 segments, 5:15. And then a huge drop off to Michael Che, 2 minutes 47, just on update. Ben Marshall with 3 brief bits, 2:17. Tommy Brennan, 4 appearances, but just a minute and 50 seconds. Andrew Dismukes, 58 seconds, 2 segments. This is rough. Steve Higgins, a couple of voiceovers, 36. We got Cam with 2 appearances and just 24 seconds of screen time, and then a couple of drop-ins from Paul Simon and Ryan Gosling.
Yeah, we got to talk about Marcelo. We've mentioned this term of like the SNL stats triple crown, when you win the power ranking and you also have the most appearances and most screen time, because you kind of typically need one, if not both of those things, to kind of win the season as stats. So Marcelo, I feel like, hit this for the cycle this episode. First of all, career high, 13:24. His previous career high was 10 minutes 20 last March in the Mikey Madison episode. So it was 10:20. Now Marcelo's career high is 13:24. Of course, racked up 5 minutes frozen behind Trump and Hegseth in the cold open, but he was in the cold open. And then leads the first sketch. So of course he's in some live sketch material, does update, and does pre-tape work. So Marcelo was everywhere. He didn't just get garbage time like some other cast members this week from the cold open. He really crushed everything because he had his own update spot with Mikey, who I could say the same thing about, and the Sebastian Maniscalco reprisal was a headline too.
What's interesting for Marcelo is that, I feel that they can't help but, when they put him in a sketch, make him have the large focus of the sketch. And that just could be his natural personality. And it's tough because when he hits, he really hits. But if he's in a sketch and he takes the focus away from other aspects that are good, then that's where we run into trouble with someone like Marcelo. So the thing is like, he has all of the qualities of someone who could be dominating week after week. But I feel like he's always walking this tightrope of like finding his place on this show. And sometimes when it hits, like I said, it is MVP stuff we get this week. Other weeks, it doesn't. Like, I didn't think that Connor Story week, where they really like handed him the ball, that he took it and ran with it.
Right. It was the first sketch as well. So it is like apples to apples, the last first sketch of the night, the post monologue sketch with the Mr. Franzi. Like, that was kind of didn't give me the energy I wanted for that episode, and they kind of recoup with the ice skating sketch and so forth. But this one, it was a impression that he's done before in the Glenn Powell episode, and they brought it back at a good time. It kind of took the heat off Harry, but at least he kind of got to meet it at the end. And to your point earlier about Sabrina coming in double duty and having that 31:44 number versus Harry, it seems like maybe earlier in the year they were able to rely on someone like Sabrina Carpenter, although that was her first time hosting. And now the cast is cooking so much that maybe they didn't feel the need to have Harry carry stuff, because I don't know if he has that in him really anyway, but he's definitely good enough to be, the B in a sketch or share the A in a sketch.
Yeah. I mean, my question for Marcelo is like, does he want this? Does he want to be the leader of the show? Because I do wonder if he is just great with having one sketch that he dominates a night. So like, it's not going to look great on the stat line week after week, where Mike, we're going to say like his career, like he crushed all the metrics. But I wonder if there is like a happy balance of like, what is our Marcelo sketch of the week? And that is the place for him that we all don't feel like there's like overexposure, but that's okay.
Interesting too with Marcelo's stats because they have been overall underwhelming from what we thought they'd be coming in after 50, and is he can take over the show, especially when Bowen left. But he just achieved like the 4-minute screen time average over his career. We're gonna talk about Dismukes later, and that was the point I was researching, those moving averages. And Marcelo just hit that 4 minutes. So you look at all his episodes he's ever done, he's finally at the 4 minute. And do you think he can hold that? Because he would need that Bowen slot or like a Marcelo sketch basically per night. Because if you get these bit rolls, look at Tommy Brennan, 4 appearances, a minute 50. Even Veronica, like she got 5 in 5 appearances. So you kind of need to be in a lot of stuff to meet that 4 or 5 minutes every week if you don't lead a sketch.
Well, I would use this week as a template for him, which is that like he did dominate all the metrics. So as you said, this was a great Marcelo week and he was the MVP. He had what I was talking about, which was like his sketch, the Sebastian Maniscalco sketch. Then we had moments in the night where, we have to decide if like to each their own, if they feel like this was additive to the performances he was in, or if it took some of the focus away from the good parts. But he was, a pretty big part of the cold open, even though it was mostly a James and Colin piece. He was there as the son getting a lot of focus. He's made fun of by Trump. So, he's going to be there. They're going to talk about Marcelo and, playing kids and all of that. Then we're going to have him later on in the night in the She's a Dancer pre-tape. So, that to me is like a great use of him where he is sort of taking one verse to himself and he becomes the focus for a small portion. And I feel like that flowed pretty well. The Harry for him sketch, I mean, you're going from person to person. So I feel like that highlights individual personalities on the cast. Like, again, a very solid use of him. And then when it comes to the Mikey Day and Marcelo piece, on Weekend Update, I mean, I also feel like he was really great because he was just sort of at the whim of, Mikey, who was hamming it up even like higher than Marcelo, which is sort of like the opposite of what we would get. So to me, like, I think this was the perfect night for Marcelo Hernandez.
Definitely. Like I said, bad in the cycle. Was in all the phases of the game, but was used properly. So, the stats don't lie, but so we can't hold it against you maybe if you got put in a sketch that didn't work and you tried your best. That's how the show goes. But when you do show up in those spots, I think it means a ton. And that's been the story for Jane Wickline. So we're not going to do a Jane segment tonight because I think we've done one every time John's been on this season, but we can't ignore it because it's what a turnaround. This is, speaking of last week's episode, a lot of these storylines came to fruition this week, which is good for me for the show. But me and Bill, I finally did my Danger Watch segment, and I left Jane off that because she's been getting more and more and more. And that was the exact stat I was trying to describe about that, like last quarter of the season, like putting on the Jets and just making a little bit more of an impression than you did in the first 2/3 or the first 3/4. And that's exactly what's happening with Jane Wickline, whose stats are just like compiling when it counts.
Look, we cover this on every show, so we won't get into the whole like Jane Wickline insane turnaround storyline here tonight. But I do think it's cool the way the show has been using their female cast this season, which is that we came on to the show where the first few episodes, they were really leaning on Chloe and Sarah. They were the veterans in sketches, and they would put them together as, they were sitting at the table, for the K-pop Demon Hunters or for, another sketch. And there were like 2 sketches in a row in the Bad Bunny episode where they did that. Then there was another one where the 2 of them were commenting on like that dancer sketch where the dummy got thrown out the window. Like the early part of the season. Yeah, it really felt like those first few episodes. It's like, okay, like here's the 2 veteran women of the cast, so we're going to lean on them. Ashley then broke out, and you couldn't help but see like, how great she is, so you're going to lean on her. And then it seems that they've realized, okay, like we need to look to our future now, and now let's lean on Veronica and Jane, who have developed their own chemistry. First in pre-tapes, which is probably a little bit easier, right? Because they both, Veronica comes from that like, pre-tape sketch background, that type of thing. And, the TikTok style things for Jane, and that worked with Cousin Planet. But to me, it was just so impressive this week that they were able to then translate their chemistry into a live sketch, which I thought was my favorite of the night. And what it led me to was like, wow, the future of the show for the women is like unreal. And like, thank God for Jane being like given that time to grow, but then having Veronica and Ashley with her, because I feel like they're going to constantly push each other forward. And like the most successful cast members in the history of the show were competitive enough to get their sketches on, but supportive enough of their castmates that they like nobody was, bothered by how successful they became. And I feel like that is what we're going to get here with these three women on the show is like Veronica, Jane, like Ashley, all three of them in that drive-through sketch. All three of them had great parts in it, and it was a huge success for the show.
Definitely, if we can get a new modern 2020s like SNL Girl Squad, that can keep fans too who like identify with that era, especially for the younger female SNL fans that can remember like that old thing we always say about your favorite cast is your high school cast, is when you can put your finger on like, oh, that crew. So if there can be, we don't want maybe clicks in the writer's room and stuff that happens, but when you can actually look at Veronica, Jane, Ashley as this new incoming, and especially if they work with Sarah Sherman for 3-4 more years. But this is kind of tells the whole story of the Jane Wickline turnaround. As I mentioned, looking at can you improve your screen time and your stats later in the year to kind of ensure or have the best chance at being invited back. And for Jane, it would be her promotion year. It would be her third year, not her second, like a Tommy or a Cam. So third highest career screen time this week. And that White Castle drive-through sketch, which I loved, maybe top 5, top 3 of the season for me. Again with Veronica, 6th longest non-update appearance, because we talked so much about, well, her stats are inflated by update. Can't hold it against her, but where else is she in the show? So that was a big one, 225 in that sketch. Made 4 appearances in 3 of the last 4 SNL episodes. In her first 31, she only had done that 4 times. So has already kind of lapped her previous Jane Wickline self with this new Jane that came from maybe the Skarsgård Olympic sketch and things of that nature that put her forward. I know she won our MVP that week.
Yeah. I don't know what else there is to say besides that I've just never seen anything like it in my life. I've really never seen any cast member have a turnaround the way that Jane Wickline has. When me, you, and Andrew were here, Andrew Dick, at Christmas, we had like a very healthy debate about her, about, who she was, who the comparisons were. I think I called her Anne Risley. I think it was like, that was my comp for her at the time. And now I'm, it's just a very different situation that we're in. So as far as like, you're talking with Bill about Danger Watch, I feel pretty good about her.
Definitely. And I didn't think it would happen. I thought it would be, she could have a strong year, but even then it would be a debate of, well, let's really look at it in comparison and do all that data stuff and not feel good about it at the end. I think it's just a confidence thing. I think it's just something clicked, flipped a switch. It seems
I don't
like
think
what
it's
it is on
just that.
screen.
I don't think it's just that. I don't think it's just a confidence thing. I think it's also like a relationship thing. I think that obviously she had, she built enough equity at the show with working there for a year plus that people like wanted her to succeed. So there was obviously some sort of, watching the tape, figuring out like, how do we take this dry, monotone wit and use it in a sketch? And they tried it and it wasn't exactly working and they fiddled with it. And it was like, sometimes we see this all the time in sports, Mike. We see all the time like athletes who, just aren't cutting it. Maybe they're like really highly touted prospects. And then like the coaches just continue to find their lane and it takes longer than maybe some others. And then they break out and they show their potential. And it makes us all better for it.
Definitely. Well said. Anyone else want to talk about, or should we move on to Dismukes?
I definitely want to talk about Andrew. I think I'm pretty good. I'm sure other people will come up in conversation. I guess the only one minor thing I'd say about Jeremy, which is just that, again, weekend update, absolutely crushing it out there. He had that great sketch with Melissa McCarthy earlier in the season. I think there's certainly going to be down the stretch a debate of rookie of the year between Veronica and him. I think, based on Veronica's sketch work, probably will take it at this moment, but that's a race I'm really interested in between now and the end of the season.
And John, I believe I'll give you credit for this because you said it very early in the season. Maybe it was the first flash we saw from Jeremy, but as I've been tracking his rookie year, it is lining up. I caught it last week with Ashley's rookie stats. So that kind of slow burn. Oh, are we going to see a lot from this person or not? And then you get one big one and you, okay, how many weeks do we have to wait till more from Pinwheel to, his update appearance, the first one. And now we got the second update appearance. So it seems like it is tracking that way. I can't really hold anyone to the standard that Ashley's having in her second year, but it does bode well for a second year for him. So I did not put him on Danger Watch.
No, for sure not. And the other thing to keep in mind, again, we'll keep tracking this as we go for the last 5 episodes of the season, but Jeremy has, a lot more men as castmates than Veronica has women as castmates. So naturally, they're going to be using Veronica more in sketches than they would have Jeremy. So when we look at like a side-by-side comp of how they're doing this season, that is like another metric we should keep in mind here. But overall, I mean, like, how can you complain about having these two amazing rookies that are clearly going to be part of the show for years to come?
Yeah, let's do an update. So Jeremy's at 51 appearances, 59 minutes, almost a full hour of screen time, versus Veronica at 55 appearances, but 26 minutes more screen time, almost 27 minutes. So more Veronica in those appearances, but just 4 more overall. So they're both definitely candidates. But yeah, let's talk about Dismukes. I know you've been dying to talk about our boy AD. So whip this up for you, John, this little graphic.
Yeah, so sometimes we refer to Andrew Dismukes as sort of like a Will Forte light, and there is a bit of comparison there, not only in their style of sketches that they produce on the show, and I think like if you're ranking the all-time, weirdos that have succeeded on the show, I think like he's right up there with Will. So, which is the highest of compliments as far as I'm concerned as an SNL fan. But I think that there is something to talk about here, which is that Will, in his final season at the show, started to lose steam a little bit as far as getting on some of the sketches in his voice. Like he really had like season 32, 33, 34, he was getting on a lot. And then like towards the end of 2010, that like 2009, 2010 season, like he was starting to fall off a little bit. And then he would decide to leave before coming back for 36. And, definitely like I felt the loss right away, even though a lot of the major, remnants of the cast were together. And like, I am wondering if that's what's happening here with Andrew, this pattern of like, is he getting ready to go? I don't have any evidence of this beyond what I'm seeing on screen, but like, let's play out a couple of scenarios here, Mike. Number one is if Andrew's getting ready to leave the show and work on future projects. I mean, keep in mind, he's been a cast member for 6 seasons, but he was a writer before that. So he's been at the show even longer. If he's getting to leave, then I understand the show wanting to focus on other people to give them opportunities to see what the future of the show will look like, even if they're giving like Mikey and Keenan some things. But I could see them like wanting to lay off him a little bit. However, if he's not going, and if he's coming back next year, like let's say we find out Andrew's back, we'll all be thrilled, right? Because we all love Andrew. We want to see him more. But then it opens up a major question, Mike, of like, what is really happening here? Because he is one of the most unique voices in the cast. He, for a very long time, was putting up consistent numbers of, I think, about 4 minutes screen time a week. And all of a sudden, there's this like major drop off of this guy who has been one of the faces of the show the last few years, just not being around anymore. And it's really disappointing.
What's going on? What's the goal here?
Yeah. What's happening?
All right, so I've talked about Dismukes a lot in this show because I think he's a good exemplar of what I do with SNL stats, like what the method is, how we can talk about SNL and data and do a show about it every week. Because Dismukes came in as a cast member under some of the worst circumstances, the COVID year, election year, with the biggest cast ever, with so much of the mandates, and we saw some of the lowest screen time across the board because we had less people in sketches, and they were like leaving sketches earlier. Like there was so much weirdness with the numbers of that season, and you can always just point back to the protocols. So you look at Dismukes rookie number, a minute 47 average, but then you look year after year, and he jumped to the next minute bracket each season, And it was just such a cool and clear path of somebody that started from the bottom and kept going up each year. So he comes back in season 47, second featured year, 254, screen time up 63%, just right off second year. Third year gets promotion up to 334, screen time up 23%. Then season 49, his fourth season, 416, up 20% again. Season 50, high pressure season, goes up to 5 minutes, 35 seconds in some of the most competitive airtime with a lot of vets around and Lauren probably pushing some of the material more than ever when we know it's going to be a big episode. I would imagine there's a lot more conversations in a season 50 than a 49 or 51, but that's just me. He went up 31%. And this is the first season now we're seeing a drop. So does that mean Andrew's having a bad year? Not really. It's been 3 episodes. That's been his worst 3-episode average basically ever. But it also might show, is there a peak for a performer like him? Is that 4.5, 5 minutes? It's so tough to say, but this is the first drop we're seeing, John. So if he does do a Forte 8 seasons and that was the peak, what does that say about this archetype you're trying to describe?
Well, I was okay with what was happening to him previous to this, which was that last season, his numbers were going up. He was being consistently used and relied upon in sketches. However, he wasn't getting the showcases that he was getting in season 49, where he was really driving the comedy. It happened every now and then, but it wasn't happening a lot last year. And we were like, okay, well, if you want to make Andrew one of your go-to guys, he's going to be great because you can go to him for a line in a sketch. He's certainly really reliable. And I was like, okay, we're going to probably talk about his career as, what could have been a little bit. But still, at least we got like a couple seasons in 48 and 49 of like him being like, this guy that was bringing this like quirky energy to sketches and just like awkward tension that I feel like the show does need every now and then. But now, Mike, he's not only not driving sketches, but he's also not being put in sketches. And I know that you said like the fall was consistent, Andrew, but at what point do we describe a pattern? So like you said, it's the last 3 episodes have been really rough. Okay, like 1 episode, not big deal, an outlier. 2 episodes, I can be like, all right, that's kind of weird. 3 episodes, that's something wrong here. Like if you tell me like, okay, he's writing a screenplay and like they decided not to use him, that's fine. But like, I'd rather you not be on the show and then like just coming on for a sketch or 2 if you're going to like not even have your own voice at the show. So that's what scares me, Mike.
It's really been a New Year thing too. I feel like, if you want to go back to the Finn Wolfhard episode, he had 1:18 in that one. So Tiana Taylor 5:37, Skarsgård 7:21. So it kind of went back to average with those 3, including the 1:18 with Finn Wolfhard. It's just been these last 3 with Story, Gosling, and Styles. 2:08, 35 seconds last week, 58 this week. So that averages to a 1:14, which is about where that Finn episode was at 1:18. That in the new year, there's definitely a noticeable Dismukes drop off. So I just kind of just graphed out his whole career so you can see the peaks and valleys. But this is the first valley we've seen in a long time. He had a bad episode with Martin Short for Christmas that year, but the 5-timer episode. Other than that, couldn't be more consistent. Rarely ever drops below 3 minutes. And now I've seen it happen 3 times in the new year.
Well, also, I mean, so he had this Titanic passenger sketch with James that got cut from the Gosling episode. That was a cut at dress. That wasn't a cut for time. So I, think that would have obviously given him something in this run, which makes me think he's not like distracted doing something else. It's just for whatever reason that didn't make the show. And maybe it wasn't good enough to make the show. But I mean, looking at other cuts from him this season, in the Ariana episode, he had these 2 Animal Index pre-tapes that I believe one was from the previous week. So we had like these 2 solo Andrew pre-tapes that were from season 51, episode 8 and season 51, episode 9 that were both cut and then never put online, never put anywhere. So I don't know what their plan is for him when it felt like he was so consistently relied upon. And I could take your word that like this is just 3 episodes, but I'm not feeling good about where he's at right now.
I also want to point out that Andrew Dismukes is younger than Ben Marshall, Tommy Brennan, Ashley, Sarah, Jeremy, like a bunch of the featured players, that it's kind of when like Rob Gronkowski retired, John, and then like years went by and you realized that him and Travis Kelce are the same age? Just because Dismukes had been there for so many years before, so young, that he does maybe feel older in this cast, but he's still very young. So he has.
Oh, so is that like, are you trying to say that he's going to have like, he could have 3 or 4 more seasons and this will just be like a weird mid-career dip?
I'm not making a stat comparison, just that when someone's on, he's now a vet. Like we talk about Chloe Fineman being the most tenured woman in the cast, and then it's like Sarah and JJ, but Dismukes is that senior man who's not named, 4 of the oldest cast members in history, and Mikey, Keenan, Jost, and Che. So Dismukes by default is like a vet in this cast, coming from 46 with a bunch of new guys that he might feel a little older to you, but he started as a writer so young that I think it just maybe the SNL generations and eras feel off kilter. But you brought up about these last 3 hosts and maybe about like hot guy hosts and pandering and stuff. Maybe that doesn't really work for Dismuke style. I don't know.
Yeah, that's certainly a possibility. But he really does need like a good week when we come back. What were Andrew's numbers in the Jack Black episode in season 50? Can you pull those up? Because
yeah, definitely.
I would be curious like what that looks like when he comes back next time. But like just looking at like the men of the cast, right? Like Andrew like really feels like if you're like everyone at home, like you can do the same sort of exercise. Like you're sitting down and you're like the coach of this team. So like you're looking at your men that are on this cast right now and you're trying to plan out like who do I want to really push on the show. James is a no-brainer, right? Like he's like probably the most multi-tooled performer they have at the show. So like in a perfect world, James is doing 4 to 7 sketches a week and is around 10 minutes of screen time. Like that's like, he's like, he has that in him, right? They haven't been using him that way. I mean, this season's been a lot closer to that, but still like you feel like that's a place for him. And then, Andrew and James are as close as it possibly can get between the castmates. So you sort of feel like Andrew has that leg up because he's built that relationship with James. The other person you're going to naturally push is Marcelo because he is, so captivating for a lot of the audience and he has such a large personality. Only in his 4th season, it would make sense to give Marcelo a sketch every week. Keenan and Mikey as veteran presences should really only be in sketches as additive. They should not be focused around. So for me, like that's my thing of like the Keenan Mr. Pooty thing like should not happen in 2026. Mikey I think should be, to me he's so valuable to the show as a writer. So I think like for me, like I would have them be working with Streeter on writing sketches and then sort of like be jumping in. So like those are your main veteran men. Jeremy, clearly we have to like build up a little bit. And then, Tommy and Cam are people who like I don't have faith in right now from what I've seen through 15 episodes. And then Ben is like an enigma for me. So like for me, like I'm just looking at this out and I'm like trying to like map out where I see like to me there are holes right now that Andrew can clearly fill to build great episodes of the show. So would the last month of Saturday Night Live been better for having Andrew Dismukes as sort of like awkward guy energy around these 3 like hot male hosts who bring a lot of people to the show? Absolutely.
Yeah, I can't think of a such scenario though that having a Dismukes sketch with any type of host would be net negative. I think it's usually a good thing. And talk about Marcelo having a piece to replace maybe the slot for Bowen each week. I like to see Dismukes get that with anybody, and it could be host dependent. But speaking of Jack Black, hey John, here's a storyline to watch going into Jack Black week. It was one of his best episodes of season 50, 8 minutes, 9 seconds, 7 appearances. Like that was his highest of the season, not in screen time, but huge power ranking. He had the Indiana Jones game show after the monologue, like a really solid night for Dismuke. So if anyone needs a comeback week, it's perfect timing and for the perfect person for Dismukes in Jack Black week. It is a 5-timer week though, so there's an extra wrinkle in there.
So we can agree that if Andrew doesn't have a good week in the Jack Black episode, he's in trouble.
The stakes definitely get amped if it's a bad week with Jack Black, I would say.
Okay, when are you going to say Andrew Dismukes is in trouble then?
Well, are we talking? I guess we'd have to look at some of the writing credits and the cut stuff, because if he's putting forward, Yeah. So if he's putting forward Dismukes style pieces regularly, so that means they make it off the table, they actually get produced, get rehearsed, and are done live on a stage for an audience, and then gets cut, then it's a matter of other things. But if he's not getting those type of things regularly and it's striking out left and right, then it means either he's losing some of his fastball or he's interested in other things, like you mentioned earlier, if he has, greener pastures to look forward to.
So let me just go through, because we can sort of wrap up here on this, which is that I'll go through all of the Andrew sketches that have made it to the show in season 51, and then I'll tell you all the Andrew cuts, so we could sort of lay out the map of what his season has looked like. So in chronological order, we had a great commercial in Amy Poehler's episode, non-alcoholic beer, very much in his voice. Then we had the Andrew and James piece the same night, experienced lawyers, Bilson and Lieberman. So fantastic night for Andrew Dismukes to start the season. Then he did help with Veronica's appliance jingle sketch, so I'm sort of like going to give that time a little bit. The NHL PSA with him and Ashley at the start of the season, that promo shoot for Miles Teller. Two people who just hooked up, him and Ashley. The Gargirl sketch, Miles Teller also. So Miles Teller, a fantastic week for him. And, that's sort of like a thing that we haven't talked about in a while, Mike. Like Andrew and Ashley were such a pairing at the start of the season. That's gone away. Him and James put together that pilot announcement sketch in the Nikki Glazer episode. Then we had Sunday Supper, which was sort of the only Andrew Dismukes, except I guess Gargirl and Sunday Supper are like the only ones that we sort of seen fully in his voice. That was him and Moss Perricone that we had in Melissa McCarthy's episode. Then another two people just hooked up. And then the Cards Against Humanity sketch was Andrew and James. That was sort of given to Skarsgård to anchor, but that was a sketch from years ago with Oscar Isaac, I believe that was. So that was it for ones that made it to the live show, most of which happened before 2026. So the first half of the season, he had some great episodes. Now, nothing. And then for cuts, again, maybe this is like starting to see a pattern or a trend here, but Josh O'Connor's episode. So we get all the good stuff. Then we get to Josh O'Connor's cut Animal Index film, cut this bullying seminar that was him and James from Josh O'Connor's episode. We got 2 animal indexes cut from Ariana Grande, and then we have the Titanic piece cut from Gosling. So it's really like you could track of like serious great episodes to like things are kind of getting cut to now he's not getting anything on.
Yeah, that's kind of what matters though, right? Is what you're producing at the show, because we can talk about behind the scenes stuff all the time, and it's great to have that information. But when people start to lose that thread, I'm so glad you brought up the Ashley pairing, because it seemed like, oh, this might be the next big thing. This is Mikey Heidi 2.0, Ashley and Dismukes. And then when it goes cold for long enough, I mean, they did it for the, promoting the Super Bowl with the Patriots Seahawks thing. So it wasn't that long ago, but that's something that I forgot about, because it just, once the Olympic break happens and then they don't see Dismukes for 3 weeks, you kind of forget about it.
Yes, but that's the thing, is that like seeing two people who just hooked up again on Update is fantastic. I would see that a bunch of times. Like I think it is one of my favorite things I've seen this entire season. But is seeing that again an indication of him being able on a week-to-week basis getting things on in his voice? No, because it's just them going back to something they did in the fall.
Yeah, I mean, you got to do what works, but I think Dismukes has to, regardless of what happens next year, you got to get 1 or 2 more of those Dismukes style sketches. It reminds me of Kyle Mooney. He had his stats are so all over the place, as we know, but he had a very similar late season drop off his final year. He did a 3-episode stretch where he averaged 139, and then he kind of had his curtain call in the Selena Gomez and Natasha Lyonne episodes, where he had 10 minutes combined in those 2 episodes. Moffat kind of had similar runs too at the end of 47. So those are, comps that might not be one-to-ones for the style, but are veteran male cast members who were never a Pete or a Bowen or a Keenan. They were definitely, sketch guys that were never going to be the face of SNL.
Yeah, and I think also like one of the things that we talked about with Ashley and Andrew is that like as a duo on the show, they could be very powerful. A lot of hype has gone Ashley's way, and it's 100% deserved, but that could be sometimes at the detriment of like finding the right duo to be in sketches, because you're just focused on writing like the right role for Ashley. When I do think like she's mentioned how funny she thinks Andrew is, that like maybe nobody at the show makes her laugh as much as Andrew. And I would love to see them find their way back into sketches together again. I think that that is a pairing that unless Andrew's on his way out and you sort of like don't want to build the chemistry because you're going to lose it in, 2 months from now, then like that's something that I think could carry you for another season or two.
Always like to look at the sketch numbers, just the raw sketch, not cold open, not monologue, not update, because this was a Mikey Day stat that became a Dismukes stat. Somebody who just does the live material more than anything else. And Dismukes right now is 6th behind Ashley, Sarah, Mikey, Chloe, and Keenan. He's got 49 minutes. That makes up 73% of his screen time. So it's still very Dismukes-like to have such a high number. That's, for someone who has that high of screen time, that is very high, 73%, not because he's hasn't done a ton of those, update or cold opens that really can inflate those screen time numbers for the total. So I guess looking at maybe season 50, we could see the big difference. But as I mentioned, season 50, he really got cooking.
Yeah, I really think he looked fantastic in it, except they just weren't, he wasn't, like I said, driving as many sketches as before, but you're okay with that as a fan if you see him popping up all over the place. But if he's not, then what are we doing?
What's going on here? What's the goal?
Yeah. Seriously. Yeah, exactly.
What are we doing? What's going on?
And I did just check. Season 50, Dismukes led the cast in that stat. So, of course, he had such great appearance numbers, but in just sketch time, he had 1:20:35 and almost identical. I didn't check this, John. I swear to God, I'm not lying to you. 72.1%. So almost exactly the same number percentage-wise, but he did lead the cast in sketch time rather than being 6th. And I think that's noticeable.
For sure.
Hence the segment. All right, 5 questions. This first one comes from Victor on Twitter. Is pandering to a host audience a bad thing? We mentioned it earlier, John. What do you think?
Bad thing? I would say no, it's not a bad thing. I just don't think it's something that they should rely on consistently. Like I think it's, part of the show is like the excitement and build of this like prestigious event. It's like event-based television. This is not a show. I always say this is not a show that takes place in your living room or at a local theater. This is a show that takes place like in the Mecca of New York at night. It's exciting. It's exhilarating. You get the biggest stars in the world. There's fans that gather outside the building. It is like this one night. You can only see this experience live in theory. Like I guess you can watch it online after, but it's not the same thing. And like I think that there is a level of like, all right, let's embrace the fandoms of the people who they are bringing into the show as headliners. But I wouldn't do that at the sacrifice of like losing what they do like at their core, which is like create good sketch comedy. So I think the show is at its best when there is a balance between embracing the stars that they bring into the show and using their tools to create great comedy on a week-to-week basis.
And these are Victor's words, not mine, about saying bad thing. But I want to ask you, are you thinking of this question for the overall, like the online, the worldwide fan base or nationwide fan base, or the actual people in the room, the pandering? Like as the, Bill and Thomas on the Hot Take show doing the woos after that show on Saturday.
Well, look, I've always said that I don't think that Lorne, and I don't think he does, like I think sometimes they like use this as a crutch, but I don't think that Lorne and the people who decide which sketches make it from dress to air should solely rely on the dress audience to make those decisions. Like this one got a lot of woos, it gets on. This one didn't get a lot of woos, it doesn't get on. Like that's not that doesn't compute for me. I think it should be a percentage. Like if we're going to draw on a map of like checking off of like, what are the criteria that makes this sketch get to the final marker of getting on air for everybody? One factor should be the dress audience. No doubt it is a test case or a sample size of success. But the other is like instincts, reviews, feedback, chemistry, like eye test. I think there's a lot of other things that need to be going into this. And like, that was why when I spoke to James Longman for SNL UK, I sort of like pitched the question of like, is there a dress rehearsal? How are you prepared to make these decisions? Because this is the show. Like to me, the whole show really like forms when Lorne is sitting there under the bleachers and then comes out and makes those decisions. Like, that's how somebody wins the week, is like they get their thing on air, and then like at that point they got to kill it. And if everyone loves it, like, you're going to remember it for years to come. So I think that is such a crucial portion. So when you're asking about pandering, I don't think that pandering to the dress audience in its full capacity is great for the show.
And I think that you mentioned the whole dress thing, Lauren, on the bleachers. If it weren't for that, I don't think we'd be here. I think that's what makes it that competitive sport aspect about
100%.
what's going to make it to live. So if we have the Jack Black sketches were written a week ago and we're just going to go through the game plan, that's not a show I'm as interested in watching. You agree with that, I'm sure. But
I'm completely with you on that. The exhilarating part of this show is the narrowing down of the material from Tuesday to Saturday. That's what's exciting, is that like the show was always meant to be that you're going to put the best comedy minds in the room. We're going to come up with the best stuff and then narrow it down. And maybe the best stuff doesn't get on, but for whatever, reason, it may fall apart. Some of the better, funnier material may fall apart during the week because the chemistry of the sketch didn't work, or some prop didn't work, or something like it didn't happen. Like, everything has to go right for you to get on there. And then that sketch that gets on lives forever as your legacy at the show if you're a cast member. So I think that's what makes the show interesting, is like, we then get to judge these sketches that get on because you are performing in front of millions of people, and we get to say, okay, was this decision the right decision? And the fact that it got on, great. Let's talk about if this is going to make you the biggest star in the world, like it did with Will Ferrell and Eddie Murphy and Kristen Wiig and all those people. That's the fun of the show.
Clip that. That's the beauty of it, John. It is when we see a sketch that is long and it bombs and it's crickets. I love that too. I always say this on the show, how I love bad SNL almost as much as I love great SNL, because I think about those things. This made it through every step from writer's night to table, through that whole week to dress, and it made it to air, and it wasn't cut for time. And it bombed. Like, that is fascinating to me when I want to see what didn't make it and all that kind of stuff. So pandering is one thing.
I also say that like that thing that happens, like, there is a success failure proposition there that matters, because all of these people who are on the show isn't necessarily end game for them. Like, they want to go off and have these like great careers where they're in movies and films and fashion and influencing, and like they're doing all these things and becoming like I said, the greatest stars of tomorrow. So like, you have to get through all of the hurdles of the show itself to get onto the show, like onto the live show. And then once you're there, you have to have a great sketch for people to talk about it, for then to you get that recognition and get these opportunities. So like, there is another layer to this, and that's where like we come in as fans to be able to say like, yeah, these people are so great and they got through all of this and they deserve the recognition that they're getting.
Definitely. That's why there's people like us doing these type of numbers, because there is that aspect of what rises to the top is an expression we use a lot. And in sports, there's an expression of players play. Like, athletes at the end of the day want to be on the field. I'm sure you could ask athletes, they'd rather be starting in the lineup, go 0 for 4 strikeouts, than be benched 10 times out of 10. So these people in this cast and these writers pitching these sketches to the cast and other writers, they want their material to be on the show. How do you get there? Put your best shit forward. So
yes,
pandering or not, but
the coolest thing about this whole show, which to me, this is like what I always tell people who are like, I don't get Saturday Night Live. The greatest thing is that there's an individual aspect of this, of like, you're there to get yourself to success. You're there to get yourself on the show. So there is this like naturally competitive instinct of like, I want to be on Saturday Night Live this weekend. How am I going to get in these sketches? But you also need your teammates to get on there, because no one is, this show is not like 10 monologues. This is like a show where you need chemistry. You need your writers to write for you. You need people who can put this out together and build these relationships. So for me, it is like, it's so instinctively competitive. At the same time, you are then forced to find other people around you who have the same competitive instinct and work together to get your stuff on the show. It's like the greatest show ever, and that's why I love it.
Same. It's like having a 80-yard touchdown run. It's like, but look at that block. Wouldn't be possible without that block. You know,
Yeah.
they don't get the credit. So I can do sports comparisons all day. But as far as the pandering thing goes, we talk about a lot on all our podcasts about the online audience versus the SNL fans and bringing people in, whether through a lot of avenues. And maybe that's a question that comes from that. But let's move on to question 2. Ashley feels like she's really putting some distance between her and the other cast members on the stat board, obviously not in real life. I think saying that she's having the greatest featured player season of all time is pretty undisputed. As you look ahead to next season, though, which she would be promoted finally, what are the next steps she would need to have some serious GOAT discussions about her versus the all-time greats, and not just as a featured player, Ashley Padilla has done XYZ?
Certainly consistency is a factor here, because, you know, it's great to succeed when there's no pressure on you. But when the pressure week to week of like knowing people are coming to watch this show for you is on you, it's a whole other level. And you see this in every sport, right? Where somebody's like, you know, they like have this amazing like early career success, and then like they could be like in a sophomore slump, or they could just have like, you know, everyone's like buying tickets to go watch them, and they're like, why don't I have it? It's like, why is there a monkey on my back? And like the best cast members ever are the ones who over time just consistently found a way to stay great. And I think that there's no doubt she is the greatest featured player we've seen at the show. Circumstantially, like it is a little bit apples and oranges compared to some of the earlier seasons where we didn't get featured players. Some of the all-time greats were not featured players, or were even only featured players for one season. However, like once she gets to repertory status, she is now going to be compared to everyone who has ever been on this show. And like, this is so exciting for me. Like, I can't even begin to explain it in a way. I wish I could verbalize all the emotion, but like, Mike, we've been podcasting for season after season since season 46. And I really haven't felt this way about any cast member that's been here before, because I never felt like anybody was like, oh, wow, like you're of the, you have a chance to be the GOAT, right? Like, I never felt like we got that. I do feel like there is a chance here with her. It's a long way to go, years to go, but like sometimes you got to call it like you see it. Like, I believe I will be telling my grandkids that I watched Ashley Padilla on Saturday Night Live.
They were like, cool, Grandpa.
Yes, they're going to be like, what show is that?
NBC. Anyway, I feel that we've been waiting for this. So not to be too dramatic, but I feel like we get the dramatic spirit, John, right now with these questions, just the two of us going back and forth, is we weren't podcasting when Kate McKinnon started. So
correct.
You could argue this. There was a definite rise that we got to see in real time and do stats on with Bowen Yang, whose time is now over on the show. It does not even come close to what we're seeing with Ashley Padilla from the beginning. I know Bowen was season 45. We didn't podcast that year. We came in the second year. He got promoted. And he got better stats, on and on and on. We haven't seen that with Sarah Sherman or James Austin Johnson, who both had great featured tenures and are continuing to have excellent repertory tenures. So this is that Drake May comparison. Sorry to bring up football again, but having a second year where you rise to the occasion, have MVP numbers, reach the Super Bowl, it's like, was that just that second year spark, or are you actually a top 10 quarterback in the league? So Ashley Padilla has been quarterbacking sketches this season. She's not been the Michael Longfellow or the Devin Walker who's like making us laugh, maybe the best in that one sketch for 10 seconds. She's been doing Kate McKinnon, Cecily Strong style stats and performances, and doesn't hurt that it's like we've been waiting for the next great SNL woman. Don't think it was Chloe Feynman, Melissa Villaseñor, or Chloe Trost. So we're here now, and I think it's the GOAT discussion can wait, but we need to have the discussion about what that would take.
I think that we're too early for the GOAT discussion. I just think that like, this is what's fun. Like in sports, they often talk about it as like barbershop talk. Like, people sit around and they debate who the greatest is in every sport because, everyone wants to feel like they saw the greatest that, and it makes them feel valuable as like a fan of the show of like, hey, I was there for that. And like, I wasn't around to watch Phil Hartman perform in the show. Thankfully, we have the tapes to be able to like go see what he did here. And like, I think there is like a really great debate that we have had on this podcast before of like, is it Phil Hartman? Is it Will Ferrell? I think like Kristen sort of like has that like outside shot there of like, you can make that argument as well. And then there's a bunch of other people who are like really, really great in the top 10. Your Dana's and haters. And like, there's a lot of like really, really great ones that you can argue sort of have an opportunity there. But I think when it comes to GOAT discussion, I think, you start to get into like the third year, the fourth year, the fifth year, and you get to some consistent points. I think that's when you start looking at this. And I'll say with Kate McKinnon, who I believe is a top 10 cast member of all time. I think if we were podcasting when Kate joined the show right towards the end of 37, we'd be like, whoa, this is really cool. Like sort of like a Kristen replacement. We'd feel like this is interesting. And then at 38, like she starts doing these sketches and she has Cecily and 80 there. So like, they're also really good, but like really Kate is like above the pack. I think we would start looking at this and start talking about GOAT discussion for Kate. And I think she got really close. And I think there was sort of like this mid-career of like, we're going to shove her into politics and like have her be the political face of the show that ultimately harmed her GOAT case. And like, that's the thing with James that's tough is like James to me has top 10 cast member of all time talent, but overall I think it hasn't actually fully come together until like maybe this season where we've seen him really just like flex his muscle on a lot of the show. So we're now, how many seasons into his career? We're like 5. So if James like has like a long career at the show, if he sticks around for another like 5 years, let's say, and he does like 10 years and he continues to up the ante every single year between now and then, I think we could start like talking about where his placement is among the legends. But it's really interesting when you have someone in just their second year already just crushing all the metrics, being the talk of the town, completely being like written about in publications. Like the show needed this like lifeblood given to it, especially post 50. And I think she's a huge reason why.
Can I blow your mind real quick with some stats, John?
Yeah.
So when we talk about all these sports analogies, a lot of times people will add the caveat, this person at their peak or in their prime, right? It happens all the time. When you see NBA player near the end of their career and there's a newcomer and they're going head to head, it's like how exciting to see Tom Brady versus Mahomes at the end, like that kind of ships passing in the night, or different sports have different analogies. But when we started podcasting and I started doing these numbers on the SNL stats days to now, Kate McKinnon, Kenan Thompson, Beck Bennett, people like that were blowing our minds because we didn't have a lot of reference point to it. But Kate McKinnon's numbers were so strong that it did feel to me like, can it get much better than this? This is prime Kate McKinnon. And remember, there were times when she was away from the show that she, like when she came back for her last season, let's go to there. I want to blow your mind. Season 47, missed the first 7 weeks, the Tiger King show. Comes back, guns blazing, Billie Eilish episode. We remember it well. And goes on to have her final curtain call. Kate McKinnon's screen time average. Didn't miss an episode once she came back. So from Billie Eilish to the end, 6 minutes, 31 seconds. And that was mind-blowing. Before I give you the reveal, let's look at season 46, the COVID season, the rookie year for us, John, of the SNN, when Kate McKinnon was running the show. This is way before Bowen. Kenan and Mikey, we didn't really know how they were going to go up or down. 7 minutes, 3 seconds. So even better, you could say, okay, maybe Kate's prime was her penultimate, not ultimate season. So 7:03 and 46. The screen time average for Kate in 47 was 6:31. Ashley Padilla's is 7:21, John.
Man.
So this is a featured player that's getting better than prime Kate.
That's what you call a mic drop. I love that. That is so great to hear. I mean, this is the thing, though. Mike, we're on a numbers podcast right now. the GOAT debate for Saturday Night Live has to be a mix between numbers and eye test. Okay, so the numbers could say that this person has the greatest metrics in the history of the show. There has to be a little bit of feeling that like we are seeing star on a week-to-week basis. So I think that like, you know, sometimes I look at the look at the advanced like data that we do sometimes, and I look at like those Phil Hartman numbers, and like they're just so unbelievably higher than anybody else that I can't help but feel like he is the GOAT. But like I know that in real time, Dana was getting way more attention than Phil. So like that hurts Phil's case as the GOAT. Whereas like Will Ferrell, after like you lose Mark McKinney and Jim Brewer, like he really not only has like dominant metrics, but he also has that like week to week thing that everyone's like, okay, like I'm watching the show for him. And I think Kate had that too. So I think that like the thing is like that is where Ashley is exciting now, because she's not only having these insane numbers that you're talking about, which we're hoping will continue for the rest of her career, but there are people who are likely going to come back to this show. Maybe they dropped off. Maybe they're like, SNL isn't for me anymore, whatever it is. And they're going to hear about Ashley Padilla and be like, I want to see what she's doing on the show. And that is like the best case scenario for Saturday Night Live.
And to see the star rising in real time is just fun, because it is a week-to-week show. It's a long season, and there are episodes that are like, that wasn't a great episode for that person. But when you have the consistency, and you mentioned about the GOAT case and how we are doing a podcast about stats, is the Hall of Fame in sports, or talking about this podcast going back 51 seasons, you kind of need that edge to differentiate, because unless we have somebody, you know, older than Bill Kenny, sorry, Bill, that has been watching since George Carlin in 75 and really has a sharp memory and can tell you everything about the show, we need to rely on people's opinions of the show then, and then we have the numbers. So let's move on to questions.
Well, wait. Sorry, you can't leave me on that. I disagree tremendously with that point, because unlike going to watch like 1920s baseball, Saturday Night Live is like 99.9% available for people to watch from start to finish. So like, yes, we can't go back necessarily and talk to everyone. I mean, the SNL's been around for 51 years. Half the world's population has turned over in that time. We can't go back to everyone who was there to watch it and ask them what they thought. But like, you certainly can read reviews. There's no doubt about that. And you can watch the show yourself. So to me, like, people are talking about, you know, I'll use again, forgive the sports analogy. I know not everyone is going to follow this fully, but I'll just explain like the Bill Russell debate in basketball, which is the guy who has the most championships. He was a player coach. He did things like no one else has done, but like there are, you know, debates about like games between him and like Wilt Chamberlain. Like, did they really happen? Like, did Wilt Chamberlain actually get 100 points? Like, there's like, they were talking about this in the last few weeks on Sports Talk Radio. Like, there's so many things that happen in older eras of professional sports that are like a little bit disputed because people weren't there to see it. Where, I forgot Bill Russell actually hosted the show, but yes, that's a great point. Thanks, Victor. But I think with SNL, we have the privilege of like, if you want to invest the time, you can watch these things. You can see for yourself how you feel about it. And like, our goal here at the SNN is to be able to provide you this like extra layer of like, okay, there's some like things that you may not notice with your eyeballs that we can tell you are happening on a week to week, so that you can then form your own opinion about who you think that the greatest people ever were on the show.
Sure. I mean, little bit of a thin premise to be like, did this happen? I don't think we're talking about that with most sports history when we have stat sheets and records of most things. I was just going on your point about the hype, like the feeling while watching it. Of course, we can go back and watch the best Gilda Radner tonight. You can watch it easily. I mean, to have that feeling of like, who's talking about this cast member? Like, are people vibing with, you know, with the original cast, especially? That's why the show was a success, because people really vibed with that first cast. And so to go from that to Eddie Murphy and to Will Ferrell, like, it's much easier, of course. But I get your point, though.
Okay, but I guess my last thing is like the percentage of ex sports fans, like let's say you were to go to like basketball fans and you were to say like, how many of you have gone back and watched all of the basketball games that the greats from the 60s and 70s like played in? You'd be like, yeah, like maybe like I saw some highlights on YouTube. But like the SNL fans are more informed about the greats of the past than any sports fan is about the greats of the past, except for like if you listen to like pundits talk about it. So that's the thing is like we have an opportunity here, and I know we're talking to like the biggest of super fans, but we have an opportunity here as a fandom to actually properly say who the greatest people were ever on the show, because all of that is available to us and it's still interesting. So I think that's why like SNL to me is even like greater than any sport and maybe the greatest sport there is.
I love that for you. I love that enthusiasm.
Sorry,
and I don't want to go against the mission here. I mean, we have a show to do. We want people to listen to it and watch SNL, of course. But
I'm having fun. I hope you're having fun.
Yeah, I'm having a great time. I just have to, since we're going back and forth, this is like, you know, Stephen A. Smith kind of style sports talk radio about SNL, which is the whole goal, I guess, really, John, it is not the same though. I have to push back a little bit in comedy. Like comedy notoriously does not age well. I think SNL is head and shoulders above a lot of things because of the evergreen nature. And you can look back at sketch comedy sometimes. And we mentioned all the time on the show and others that there'll be a sketch and you go, oh, that would have been funny in 1990 or 1975. Like it can have that nature, but I don't want to pretend that you or I can watch season 1 of SNL and find it as nuanced and funny as if we would have been at these ages in 1975. But don't want to go against the mission. But I think it's an
but that's comparing. That's two different things. I'm not comparing myself to if I was born and alive and around in 1975. Like I can only compare what I am watching at this current time from then and from now. So for me, it's like when you are forming these opinions, you're like fighting against yourself. You're not fighting against a different version of yourself. So I
not a different version. It's just meaning that it's very easy for SNL haters to be like, oh, I saw old SNL. It was unwatchable. It was so unfunny. And I want to push back against that perception because it's a topical week-to-week show that's full of references that are not going to hit even 6 months later, let alone 30 years later.
But those are people who don't fully understand the show. Like that's my take on it. And like I'll die on that hill, which is that if you are just watching the show to decide if something is funny or not, that's your right. That's your opinion. But that's not how I watch the show. Like show is so nuanced that I don't think the show is ever going to be like, all right, funny, check. Not funny, not check. There's so many things, and like that's why there's like a million documentaries and books about the show and interviews, and like why everyone's hanging out with us here tonight is because it shouldn't be that way. So to go back to 1975 and be like, hey, this isn't as funny as 2026. Sure, that's probably true, but that's not going to tell me that's not going to like change my opinion about who the GOAT of the show is.
Good. Yeah, that's how I watch the show too. It's not, especially as the analytic guy of the podcast, I'm definitely not watching it to be like, who's funnier? Just like get that stopwatch out and rewatching the same sketch and just appreciating everything about the body of that individual segment for that period of time. But let's keep the momentum going here. So question 3, Sebastian Maniscalco. So he reacted online again. Said, I've been on SNL twice now, which sounds impressive until I tell you neither time was as the host. At this point, Harry and Marcelo have logged more rehearsal time. Shout out SNL stats, Sebastian. As me than I have. Both of them were hilarious and absolutely nailed it. Maybe the third time I can come in and do it myself. So great to hear from people who are not associated with from SNL talk about it, first of all, but he's referring to his actual portrayal. So my question for you, John, is we've had a ton of great SNL moments when the real life subject interacts with their impersonator. I'm thinking about Mark Wahlberg, Nicolas Cage for Andy, Dionne Warwick, more recently with Ego Odom. They sometimes make for these all-time great moments, but does it effectively kill the impression?
Probably, but I guess the aspect that I'm more interested in here is like if somebody like as a superstar and wants to host the show, then let them host the show. Like, I want hosts that want to be there and want to bring it and want to have fun. And like, I would assume we would get a Maniscalco, which again should probably be the end of that impression. But you know, if the end game forms naturally, then that's okay. I think like that's the beauty of impressions versus characters, where like SNL characters, I don't think have a natural ending to them. I think you can always like reinvent them and put them in new situations. But SNL impressions tend to have a shelf life, and you can end them with putting them in a sketch with the actual person, and that's okay to like be like, hey, this was the button on them.
Because we're talking about a concept of kind of fourth wall breaking. You know, if we have sometimes they'll do something cute where it's like, this is Sebastian's dad, and he's played by actually Sebastian Maniscalco. So in the world of the sketch, it's fine because Marcelo is the real quote unquote Sebastian in the sketch, and the real Sebastian is not in the sketch. But effectively, so are you saying yes, it does effectively kill that impression going forward?
I think it does, because I don't know what how do you what do you do next? Like, what's the next version of this impression? Which like sometimes impressions become characters because they become like such like an SNL, they become like such an SNL style impression. Daryl Hammond would like talk about this sometimes, where it's like it's not just like an impersonation, it's an impression. So like they can like form or reform. But I would say like you would probably want to peak on meeting the real life person. Now they've done this so many times though, Mike, that I don't know that there's like a novelty to it, to be honest with you. So like it is probably very exciting for the Sebastian fans and the Marcelo fans to get to see it. So like I don't have any hate in it, but it is something that feels like they've gone to like many times over.
Yeah, it's not unique, but it does make for an exciting clip, and it's heightens that impression. But just we've talked about Marcelo and his stats, and when he did this impression in the Glenn Powell episode, I really lauded it as this is what I want to see Marcelo do, and it's exciting to see it come back in the same season. You know, it's not Domingo, it's a new Marcelo thing, and it's an impression. He's not known for that. So if we did it like 1, 2, 3 rule of comedy, and like Sebastian is really there the third time, does it kind of just like end that road on the Marcelo experience, and it's okay, now find a new one, which I'm fine with. But I think as SNL analysts, we need to like kind of figure out what that is, because you can peak and then it comes back 5 years later with the real person. But do you want to peak and kill it at the same time? Is that really the strategy?
Well, I think when you think about a cast member's legacy, we talked about this with Bowen a little bit of like, did him having such a huge last episode with this major goodbye sketch affect the perception of his career? And I think it did. I think it was really positive for him. So when you start thinking about Marcelo, who, has a lot going for him outside of the show as well, like, what are we looking at here? He's 4 years into his career. Like, are we going to go 6? Are we going to go 7 with him? So you start to think of like, what are his big moments that have popped on the show? Obviously there's Domingo, which is sort of not really his sketch, but you would think that they would like revisit at some point. And then, there's this, and obviously he's had like some other moments that I have enjoyed on the show as well, like the Pedro Pascal sketch. I'm blanking on the name right now, but that one as well, with him bringing his girlfriend home,
the protective mom.
Yes, correct. Yes, that one I think is another big one. But you start to think about like, what are the legacy moments for Marcelo? Like, what are the things we're always going to look back on? And like, you would think that if this is an impression that they put into like different scenarios over the next couple of years, that like perhaps the right place for Sebastian to come in would be like on a last episode for Marcelo, where he really caps it off with that.
Yeah, because I'm definitely cool with either scenario. About maybe Marcelo caps off the career with that, and it's a reminder of the greatness of season 51 Marcelo, and we do a Domingo, and then Marcelo Hernandez hosts in season 61. It's all in play. But that type of progression, because it's so similar, if this happens, to the Ego Dionne Warwick, because it was a very fresh thing. Ego Odom, not known for impressions, didn't get a lot of characters. Remember, this is pre Lisa from Temecula. Did Dionne Warwick, December of 2020. Funny enough, Timothée Chalamet played Harry Styles in that one. And then 2 months later, does Dionne Warwick again. Okay, now we got a recurring impression from Ego. And then Similarly, Dionne Warwick, the joke was that she was active on Twitter, was tweeting support to Ego about it. Third time, Dionne Warwick herself shows up, never seen again. That Ego impression. So that can be a good path. I think it's just an interesting discussion about, is that kind of career hindering if for Marcelo, if that's it, or he just find a new impression and he's fine. It's all good.
I think it's probably more the Dion thing. So we'll see where this goes.
Yeah, for sure. But what's your prediction then? Does Sebastian Maniscalco appear in SNL season 51? Yes or no?
I'm gonna say no.
Okay, because I think it's not as good if it's next year. I think you want to do that rule of 3 and get it done in the spring.
Yeah, it's just like I guess in May. I mean, definitely not in April.
Yeah. All right, question 4. Let's get back into some deep analytics for a moment, because this is always a personal passion of mine, is to look at the segment times of SNL and really look at the inner workings of it. And I was working on the segment, John, and what do I see on Twitter was the new SNL Rundown series. Did you check that out?
I did. Yes.
So
great
Colin
idea
Jost,
for a show.
Yeah, I know, definitely. Talking about the segments of SNL. So I was working on this and I saw that. I go, okay, I have to do this with John. I won't make it a segment because maybe people don't want to hear about this nitty-gritty stuff for 20 minutes of the show. But let's talk about it real quick.
Yes. Mike, we should tell the listeners like what was going on here, because not everybody's online and some people just listening to the podcast. So today SNL announced that they're doing like this new digital online series that will take place between now and the middle of June on off weeks, where on Wednesdays they're going to post these like 5-minute videos on their YouTube channel, on social media, where they're going to have either a current cast member or an alumni or someone like associated with the show come in and look at this, rundown board, which you may have seen in pictures or documentaries that Lauren usually picks, like what's going to be the lineup for the show. And they're going to have these people pick their all-time ultimate episode lineup. And in this case, today we had Colin Jost choosing his favorite cold open of all time to start the greatest episode that they're going to put together between all of these people. And he chose, I believe it was the Katie Couric version of the Sarah Palin sketches that we got at the start of season 34, which was not a cold open that was chosen when we did this exact concept as a Superfan takeover a few years back.
And he did mention the GOAT, Not Gonna Phone It In Tonight from Steve Martin,
yes,
season 17.
I did choose that one.
Yep, that's the right choice, Sean. So I have a Christopher Nolan-like obsession with time, if you haven't figured that out already from doing this podcast.
You do?
But yes, of course. What's the goal here? Looking at the time segments, I'm always fascinated by that exact corkboard, which got me so excited to see that rundown series we're about to see later in the season as well, with other guests talking about other segments. But I want to look at, we have 15 episodes, season 51, and I love stats, John, that we have a giant sample size of, because you really get the best data that way. So that's why we're always improving the data in the database. Is looking at season 51 segments. I have them up on the screen. What the average length has been versus the last 150 shows. So you don't have to talk about election years and cameos and none of that stuff. Just look at 150 SNL episodes preceding 51. I did exclude the COVID episodes because they kind of fuck up stats. So looking at the difference, the cold open has gone down 13.4%. And I hear guests of yours, John, people that have been on the show a lot with us, people that are on their first time, often mention this could have been shorter. This could have been shorter. So that's kind of what I'm getting here is, what are they making shorter? Is it working? What are they making longer? They are making the sketches 3% longer. Doesn't feel like a lot, but there's more than one sketch a night. It does add up. Average sketch in season 51 has been 4 minutes, 42 seconds. The average before that for 150 episodes was 4:34. The first sketch of the night has gone up the most, 5.4%. So we're seeing that post monologue sketch longer. So you might think maybe the 10-1 sketch has gotten shorter. That's also got longer. But as I mentioned, sketches overall have gotten longer. Pre-tapes have gotten a little shorter. As I mentioned, cold open down 13.4% this season. So if you wanted less politics in SNL, you got your wish. Monologues have been down 6.4%, and weekend update down 5.6%. Do you think this is the right direction the show should be heading in, is shortening those longer segments by nature, cold open, monologue, update, making the actual meat and potatoes of SNL a little bit longer.
I do. I think there are exceptions. I think that, you start to think about some of the greatest seasons in the history of the show, and a lot of them have probably this template, which is a cast that maybe they trust to fill out the longer run times of the live sketches and the pre-tapes. I know you said pre-tapes are slightly shorter, but really live sketches. I think at its core, that's what the show should be, is really focusing on making the live material as great as possible. So that's an exciting number for me. I think that happens in non-election seasons that the show feels really good about their cast. So to me, this is a sign of the show feeling confidence in what they're having here. And if these numbers continue on the trajectory that they're on right now into 52, I think we're looking at sort of like that's what you would qualify as a new era of the show. Like sometimes it's not just the cast, but it's also the structure of the show. So I think I would say generally, yes, this is ideal. I think in election years, it's okay to go longer on those cold opens as long as you have something great. So like you think back to 34, 14, like those are two great seasons of the show. They had like these extra long debate sketches. That's going to futz with these numbers. So I think that there are seasons that are great. I would be more like, I think there's an extra layer here, Mike, which I know I don't want to put you on the spot, so you didn't need to do this for this, but I think there is like what is the segment runtime in non-election seasons and then election seasons is separate. So I'd almost want to like pull out all of the 50, 46, 42, 38, 34, 30, 26, 22, like 18, like that, the 18, 14, like all that. Yeah.
Finish it.
18, 14 to 10, 6, 2.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. That's why I wanted to go back further than 50, because it's a unique season and it was an election year, as mentioned. But to look at that, it just kind of does SNL, we have this debate, does it listen to the fans? Does it not only us as podcasters really digging into it, but when people are complaining about things or they are celebrating things, does SNL say, okay, we should do more of that or do less of that? We don't really know, but we have the numbers and the cold opens being shorter. I know there's been a lot of complaints about, oh, it's another Trump cold open. It's more of this. But if they're tighter and they get the point across, I think that works, even if it is Trump, whether you like those cold opens or not. And that has been a noticeable change. And the monologues, have to mention, I know we haven't had a ton of stand-ups. That could affect that. But overall, even if I dropped Nikki Glazer's number out of there, it's been shorter monologues. Gosling had a long one, but other than that, these monologues have been short, down 6.4% overall. If you were being Lauren for a week, John, would you want to have these 13, 14-minute weekend updates? Because they do result in the casualty of a sketch or pre-tape a lot. We see that when we see what's cut.
I don't want longer weekend updates. I think it's fine. I mean, like the thing is that Jost and Shay have been around for so long that I'm okay getting a little bit less of them to get more material into the rest of the show. I think if Jost and Shay, like if let's say there was a new update pairing, which it doesn't seem like we're heading towards, then I think there's an argument of like, hey, when this update pairing gets into their prime, like maybe we lean on them a little bit more heavily. Or in an election year, again, like I don't know if we're talking non-election years exclusively now at this point, but in an election year, you may want to lean on weekend update because that's what's really going to hit. But I think for all of the non-election years, weekend update should probably be less than the 13-minute range, because it will allow us to really focus on some of the other ideas and flesh them out.
Let's take that example then. Last year, season 50, it did seem building towards maybe Colin Jost's last season, Scarlett Johansson at the end, and we saw really long updates in election year. 13:28 average. So we're looking at the last 150. It was 13 minutes even. So 28 seconds overall, but that does include that season. Season 49, it was in the 12s, I believe. Season 49's update, 12:04. So we might get, on average, by a small sample, about a minute longer updates, and that's to be expected. But when you take out a minute or two of that, or you do one correspondent versus two, you can get an extra sketch or pre-tape, And I think that those things, I know we root for them to be canon SNL, like the Veronica and Jane, like car door pre-tape, like almost got in and didn't. It's just, for me as a fan, I like to see an extra segment. So I did do that stat as well. 12.73 segments per episode this season versus 12.5 the last 150. So we're getting 2% more segments overall. So people are wondering about that.
And there's another danger here, which I just want people to be careful of, which is that you don't want this show to look the way that it did in season 6, which a lot of people go back and they're like, the cast was great. It didn't look so good. The material wasn't so strong. Like, one of the biggest problems with that 6th season of the show post Lorne is there was like 16 to 18 segments an episode. Like, everything was not fully fleshed out. They had like more jokes than sketches. So it was and they weren't necessarily hitting always, but like they was really short things. And like, that is a different style of show that I don't think works for this show. So you also want to be careful when you're talking about like pushing in more material. It has to also make sense for this show. So there is like a healthy balance.
Yeah, it's that variety show aspect of, we've had seasons and talk about Paul Simon when it's mostly music. And then they have a lot of commercials and those like, Jamatol and those type of commercials in the early SNL that were like 30-second ad spots. Then you have an Albert Brooks short film that's 6-7 minutes. So that all would average out if we look back at 51 seasons. But looking at modern SNL, it seems the template is pretty clear. It's usually about 12. Like when I do my outlines for the episodes, I almost rarely have to reorganize sketch 1, sketch 2, pre-tape 1, where the music is, where the update is. Like, it's pretty standard, which brings me to my final question, because SNL UK is finally upon us this Saturday. We're going to see an English version of SNL that's not SNL. It's going to be SNL UK, hosted by Tina Fey. So chat, please weigh in on that choice. And I want to hear
Mike, it's a British version, not an English version.
Well, it's in English language.
Yes, I know. I made my mistake before.
Okay. Yeah. So meaning that, you can watch SNL Korea or, other SNLs that have popped up or similar shows. But this one is, we can cover it the same way because we speak the same tongue as this cast, the same way we do with American SNL, American Canadian SNL, really, So going for that direction, I wanted to ask you, first of all, I got a big picture question and a small picture question. I'm going to start with the small because we talked about segments. Is what aspects of original SNL, OG SNL, are essential to keep? Are there aspects that they could take into a different direction, making it its own show? So I'm going to start with one easy one just to get the question started. Live from London, it's Saturday night. Like, essential to keep that thread, right? Maybe Weekend Update or some form of it. But what do you think about what makes SNL SNL to translate to SNL UK?
I think they're doing everything right now, which is like they are keeping the general feel of the show with a cold open, a monologue, a Weekend Update, pre-tapes, and live sketches. Like, you have to have these tentpole structures to a show to be able to make this feel familiar and feel like we're playing the same sport over here. I think the rules of the game need to be the same, which is that we need to start with meeting the host, pitching some sketches, writing night, and I'm perfectly fine with them not writing till 4 a.m. I wonder if that's a little bit antiquated at this point, but I haven't been in that room writing till 4 a.m, so I'm not there to fully judge, but I know that's something that's been largely talked about in this fan base. But I think writing the sketches, table read, cutting, rehearsal, cutting, dress rehearsal, cutting, live show, I think that is all essential to this show. If you lose that process, then it's a different show. So I think as long as the rules of the game are the same, that is what is important here. Because like I said, with the advent of social media, the fact that we can watch this show fairly easily and talk about it the same way that we do with SNL US, it means that Saturday Night Live has become a global sport. So the rules should be the same from show to show, so that we're not saying like, well, in the UK, they do it this way, so it's hard to compare, Anya Magliano to Ashley Padilla. Like, you need to be able to like have these conversations in a way that makes sense, and that's how the fandom's going to stay invested.
Yeah, it's going to be the same. They're using the name SNL, so we got to imagine it's live. it's on Saturday,
Yes.
and there's sketch comedy. Like those are the givens. But having those type of put your finger on an SNL traditions, like I even mean the live band on stage or similar maybe style of music of like, you know, maybe they have a saxophone. Like I know there's any things about SNL that makes it feel like in your bones SNL, where this show has an opportunity though to have that template of monologue, sketch, weekend update style news piece, but it could look very different. I'm not predicting it will, but I think it's the only time to have this discussion now, John, is now, because one I want to ask about is political cold opens. That if you're a British SNL fan, seeing these characters week to week might be a little cumbersome because you don't know who Kristi Noem is and these kind of like insular Trump cabinet people, whereas Americans might not know who like Liz Truss and Sunak and Starmer and like all these PMs that like who's going to play Starmer in the cold open. Like maybe Americans just don't care about that the same way that Brits might not care about American politics in the same way. But would you imagine that there'll be political cold opens in this version?
Yeah, I would think so. I think that like that's essential to the show in its own way. I mean, I do miss, and I think Colin talked about that in the rundown today that they put out, but
Yeah.
I do miss like your sort of just like small sketch cold opens. And like if the show wants to go for that, that's fine. But I do think there is a place for British politics to be in here. I think like certainly a huge cultural thing that comes with, you know, watching a show from the UK is like, you know, the king and like the monarchy. Like I think that is something that we don't have here in North America to be able to like make fun of. I mean, there was a lot of sketches that involved the Queen of England, you know, from back in the day, that, you know, were fun to have here in the US. But I do think that like, you know, they should be touching on those things. And I think it's interesting, right? Like I'm Canadian, and I'm not afraid to talk about how much I love my country, but I also am fascinated with American politics. And I'm like, I find it ever so interesting. Maybe there's an argument that, you know, British politics are not as interesting, but like, let's give it a shot and see what happens.
Just talking about the word essential, those aspects of, you know, the live from New York, the weekend update, the, you know, ladies and gentlemen, Harry Styles, or like, you know, once again, Harry, like there's little moments that you might not think about week to week of SNL that if they were missing, you might feel weird about it because, as I mentioned in the last segment, the template is so clear after 51 seasons that when you see a new version, it's not just the accents. It could be, wow, this is a different vibe. And if you have any predictions or aspirations of what a new vibe SNL could look like, just kind of a fun discussion.
Well, I would say first off, the promo that they put out with Tina felt very like SNL US coded. So it was like,
Yeah.
it was very cute with the Mary Poppins thing, but like I think like it did feel very comedically styled the same. So I didn't get an impression so far that things are so different. But I will say that SNL US sort of has this like New York nightlife feel to it, where I know that home base has changed a lot, but there's this like, you know, you definitely get it with the opening montage and like this feel of like, you know, people running all over New York City. Like there is this like hustle and bustle to the New York feel of Saturday Night Live US. Whereas with SNL UK, I do wonder, based on the teaser that was put out a week ago or so, if it's the aesthetic is going to be more like street grungy, like sort of like they have these like dark rainy style like looks to the show that I think is interesting there, where it might feel like it. I wonder if this is a conversation between like James and Lauren of like, should, when you're watching SNL UK, you really feel like it's taking place on like you're walking down a street in London versus like the New York feel, and how do you differentiate those? And I feel like there is sort of this like star power feel to the US, whereas the UK could feel more street powered, if that makes sense.
Yeah, aesthetic is everything. You know, the famous Lauren quote about SNL starting, you know, the last helicopter had left Saigon and, you know, Nixon had resigned, and that feel and that counterculture that propelled SNL from this Carson rerun replacement to an institution didn't happen overnight. It was because it resonated with that era of the 70s America. So 2020s Britain, I personally, as a guy from Boston, can't tell you what that is or what that feels like. But that's my answer, is kind of what you were illustrating, is tapping into what it means to maybe be a young person in Britain right now, that I'm excited about as an SNL fan and future SNL UK fan. My big question, which you might have kind of answered with the sports analogy, but is, what is the best and worst case scenario for this spinoff?
I think the best case scenario is that we all get behind it and that everyone feels like this is like just as much a part of the canon of SNL US. Obviously, there's going to be, I don't know that we're going to walk away feeling like, hey, Tina's hosted the show 7 times, but certainly on her resume is going to be that she hosted 6 US and 1 UK, at least until UK is done as a franchise. So my best case scenario is like we all get behind it. They give the show a chance. I think 6 episodes for a cast to gel is nothing. It is not enough time to really flesh this show out. So I do feel like these 6 episodes are a case study. I am putting everything in my power that I have, whatever I do here from the SNN, behind this show because I want it to succeed. I think for SNL US to stick around, it is also important that SNL UK has a life to it. So for me, best case scenario is we continue to do that. I also think this show should test things out for like, what is it like to run Saturday Night Live with like a younger producer who is a little bit more in tune with social media and what people are saying about the show versus, Lorne, who's in his 80s, who has done things the same way for a very long time and eventually will have a replacement in the US. So like, that to me is like best case scenario is like, let's make the show feel like Saturday Night Live. Let's get behind it and let's try some things out that maybe could apply to SNL US in the future. I guess the worst thing is like people are just judging the show on whether it's funny or not. And then they're like, this is not funny. I'm not going to give it a chance. Like I said, there's just so much to a Saturday Night Live. I think you can enjoy it in a lot of different ways.
Because best case scenario, we talk about, and tonight we have done it a lot with NFL comparisons. NFL is increasingly putting games internationally, and it started with London, and now there's going to be a game in Paris this year. They've done Brazil and Mexico City and Germany. They've done a couple games in Germany. They're going to do one in Spain. If they haven't already. Like that's like growing the shield of the NFL. So best case scenario is making SNL such a significant and important cultural property to more viewers. That's number one for me because I want SNL to outlive us all. I want it to not end while I'm alive. I want it to keep going, and I will train my kids to do screen time. But the worst case scenario, I think, while we're talking about it, is could it at all diminish that if it's a flop? Because we don't know. I hope it's great. I will put all my support behind it. I will watch all 6 episodes, and we will cover them in some capacity week to week, especially with like hot take and all that stuff. We're going to do a stat show teaser. We're going to do by the numbers for SNL UK's Tina Fey episode. So we'll talk about that at the end of the show. But is when shows have spinoffs, kind of like an athlete coming out of retirement or going to a second team and it really doesn't go well, like, oh, their batting average dropped or it didn't go so hot, it kind of reassesses what the original thing is. So that would be my worst case scenario. Is there any merit to that? Like, I know you're a big Friends guy. Like, did Joey impact the legacy of Friends? I don't know. You be the judge.
A scripted show is so different. I don't really think you can make those comparisons because then you feel like the nostalgia of the old show like sort of interferes with what you're getting with the new show. So like I think like it's just not, it's, to me, that's apples and oranges. I think Saturday Night Live is like a very unique case where someone in the chat mentioned like the NBA, and like I think the basketball comparison here is like basketball has become like a very global sport. It's like the fastest rising sport. They're going to like open up an NBA Euro League soon. And the reason why it's so fastly growing or quickly growing is that every person, for the most part, can take a ball and throw it in a hoop. There's not an expense there like buying hockey equipment where you need to find ice. Like, it's not hard to play basketball. It's something that people can do. So when you feel like, hey, this is like part of my identity, this is a hobby of mine, this is something I do, like, you feel a part of it, and then you want to support it and you want to watch the people that play it. I think with Saturday Night Live, there is an aspect to this where like you can want to be on this show and get on this show. And I think that happened with one of the cast members where like Annabelle Marlowe, like she was just like us. She had an Instagram account about Saturday Night Live, where she was posting pictures of like Kristen Wiig and Kate McKinnon and all of that. She was just a fan of the show. She went into comedy. And then now she's been chosen to be on there. And like, this is a whole other conversation. We could do this another day, but like, I've argued long before that there should be like open auditions for the show. I think that there should be other like lanes and avenues, but truly like the comedy scene in America, like there are paths. And I think that there are, from what I can gather, throughout the UK, is that there are paths as well. Getting to Fringe is like a huge thing. There's a lot of different ways to become popular in comedy. And like the fact that you can be sitting at home watching the SNL UK and being like, one day that could be me, I think is something that's so powerful for this show and will make it succeed.
We're rooting for it. I can't wait to see it. And just give me your take on Tina Fey having an American host, let alone alumni. That's a huge part of the story. Is Tina Fey is a cast member, a 5-timer, a head writer, has all the credentials, and is now hosting the premiere of SNL UK. But just what do you think about the choice, having an American host the first episode?
I kind of love it. I got to be honest. I mean, I'd have to ask people like over there what they really think of it. Like I did see some responses on X and being like seriously, you're going to start SNL UK and bring over an American. But like, I kind of feel like this is the right thing. Like I don't think it's just the audience in the UK that's important to them. I think they see this as like a global endeavor where they want Americans, Canadians, Australians, people from all around the world paying attention to this. That's why it's going to be available on Crave in Canada and Peacock in the US. And I think they just announced that in Australia, you're getting it on one of like HBO Max is getting it, something like there. So like they're trying to make this a big thing. And like, to me, having Tina there gives this it gives this some like
legitimacy.
Legitimacy, that's the word I was sort of looking for. Yeah, it makes it feel like this is like we're handing off the show and we're going to lead in a good place. And I also think it's great for the cast. Like, look, think about Tina. Like, she's become such a huge star and like known for things after the show as well. But like, this is somebody who grinded. She came into the show as like a woman writer when like women at the show were like still finding their path to become dominant. Like obviously you had like Sherry and Molly and Anna who were there before, but like they weren't taking over the show. And Tina was like, no, I'm going to write sketches like the View parodies, and I'm going to get all the women in there. And then we're going to bring on Rachel Dratch and Maya Rudolph and find their voices. I know Amy Poehler. I'm going to bring her in. She's going to be a star. And she made like women at the show feel valued in a way that like nobody else has. And like found her way onto Weekend Update, became one of the faces of the show, reinvented herself multiple times, came back, hosted, did the Sarah Palin thing. Like, she is one of the greatest success stories in the history of the show, going from absolutely nobody knew who she was. Like, you go back to some of those like 1997 monologues and she pops up in a monologue and you're like, oh my God, that's Tina Fey. That's crazy. To one of the biggest stars in the world hosting the Q&A portion at the 50th anniversary of the show. It's the perfect choice for me.
Fully agreed. I mean, love the pick. I couldn't, we could definitely pick ones that feel of the 75 Carlin for that era I talked about, but to bridge SNL to SNL UK, make it legit, hit the ground running, perfect choice, Tina Fey. So that is 5 questions. Let's look at this cast. SNL US, should we call it? These are the power rankings after 15 episodes. Jon Schneider, take it away.
All right, Ashley Padilla still dominating in the lead now with a 106 for the season, with another great week here, 93.4. Look at all that green, just impressive stat line for the season. Sarah Sherman in second place, 91 for the season with a 79.1, so slightly down this week, but still a pretty solid week for Sarah. James had another great week with an above average week, 95.6, upping to 87.8. Moving up in the power rankings, Mikey Day with 2 absolutely crazy weeks in a row. 170.5 here this week, up to an 86, passes Chloe and Colin Jost. So we got Chloe down to number 5 here, 85.6 with an 83.4 week. A little bit, not a great month for Chloe, I would say, compared to what we were getting before for those last couple of months prior. Colin Jost down to an 84.5, even though he had a great week. So it really was just Mikey continuing to come in and crush above those two. Marcelo, 179.4, so really awesome there, 74.0 average. Keenan Thompson, solid week for him, 117.1. 2 great weeks in a row, 116 and 117 for Keenan, now at a 73.5. Andrew Dismukes falling down to number 9. We talked a lot about him before in the show. 16.3, his lowest power ranking of the season, down to a 69.3, just ahead of Veronica Slawkowska, our rookie, leading the power rankings at a 64.6 with a 78 this week. Then we got Jeremy Colhane with a really good week, the first very good week for him since week number 11. So 86 for him, and now up to an average of 50.9. We had Jane Wickline, who has, really climbed her way out of the basement, now at number 12 at a 47.48 overall average with a 79.4 week, just ahead of Ben Marshall, who is down to a 47.45. So just slightly ahead there, but 43.8. But this is a good spot for Jane, continuing to rise. Michael Che down to a 45.9 with a just short update to run at a 37.3. Tommy Brennan, 44.3 average, 47.6. And Cam Patterson, 30 with a 17.3. Not looking so great for those two at the bottom right now.
So let's start with the headline. Every time we have to break out a second decimal point, John, it's exciting because it means we have more data, yet a narrower lead, or, someone falling behind. And that is Jane Wickline, who we mentioned, talked about a lot this season. Really started the season with a shutout and is now up to number 12. And it's been a tough road for her. So let's talk about that. I want your prediction. Jane Wickline, Ben Marshall. This is actually an exciting race for me. I don't know who's going to finish ahead. I feel like it's very even. What's your take?
I think Jane's going to finish ahead. I think they have clearly figured her out. I don't know that they figured out Ben. I mean, what is his path right now?
Well,
it's
easy to say Jane will continue this because we've seen some better numbers, but Jane has a bigger up and down record,
lower floor
than Ben. Yeah. So if we get one of these, Jane had a 19.4 2 weeks ago, had a 16.9, has been shut out. Ben Marshall has had some bad and good episodes stat wise, but has been in everything, has been in every episode so far, and has that consistency to balance it out, where Jane can just maybe do 2 more good episodes and might be safe, but 2 bad episodes could just drop back again. So I would agree with Jane, but it's they're literally separated by 0.03 right now after 15 episodes of data.
Look, people who were writers on the show and then added to the cast always have a leg up. So you think of Bowen, you think of Andrew, you think of Ben, they have a leg up because they can write their own sketches.
Mikey
Day, of course. Jane now has Veronica, who she's writing sketches with. And if you were following, I think it was Rachel, one of the new writers, Rachel Pergam, I think was one of their stories on Instagram this week. It was Jane talking about how she was sitting on the NBC rooftop with Veronica and her, and I think it was the 3 of them. Apologies if it was a different writer, but and they were. It looks like it was Rachel, just looking at the writing credits. And they were talking about coming up with the White Castle drive-through sketch. It's important. You got to be able to write sketches. That's such a crucial part of the process. And for me, the fact that Jane has now found people to write with makes me feel like Ben doesn't necessarily have the leg up on her that he used to.
Next headline here. Mikey Day, dark horse candidate. We've seen it in the past. In the final minutes of one of the seasons we covered, jumping ahead of Heidi in the literally minutes, seconds in the last episode, the Gyllenhaal episode of season 49. Does Mikey Day have what it takes to do top 3 and pass, the Chloe's, Jaj, and Sarah's even? He's at 86 right now, past Chloe. He's gaining on James Austin Johnson. What about Mikey Day?
I think he has it in him. I just don't want him to, because I think that he is again, he's at his best when he's writing really great creative material. And you do see it that he has the mindset of, even in being there for so long, over 10 years he's been at the show, and he still comes up with new ways to perform in sketches and structure sketches that we haven't seen before. Just having him come up with a passing notes sketch is enough for me to justify him still being at the show. Would I have maybe preferred him to be a head writer of this show and put someone else in the roles that he's in? Yes, I think so. Then again, every now and then we get Ariel Tramway, and I'm like, all right, you still got it, Mikey. So it's a really tough call of someone who is, been there for so long, has a lot of great qualities to him, but you also want to give the newbies a shot.
Because with the power ranking, we start off the year and it's, 1 episode, 2 episodes of data. Anything could happen. We're now 15 in. This top 10 is basically locked. They can rise and fall in the 11 through 16 and the 1 through 10. Ashley is definitely safe, but everybody else can kind of fall to different areas. Veronica is going to make top 10 as a rookie, which is great. Dismukes is in danger of falling to number 10. And if Veronica passes him, then, have that discussion at the end of the year. But what do we think about Jeremy Culhane's ceiling? Because this is someone who's ahead of Jane Wickline, ahead of the other rookies, other than Veronica. And is that a 50.9, but could reach a 60 if he has 5 good weeks? Any chance for Jeremy Culhane to be the one person who could maybe sneak in there?
I don't think so. I don't think he gets to 60. His ceiling is clearly higher. And I think he does have a good final quarter of the season, but I just don't see him getting that high because of just, he's still a rookie. They're sort of holding him back a touch. But next year, like I said, I have very high hopes for Jeremy. I think he's in the top 8 next year, no doubt.
And finally, at now a 30 even, I declared Danger Watch last week on By the Numbers for Cam Patterson and Tommy Brennan. Tommy did go up slightly. He had a little bit above average. Cam, again, with half his now current average about. He's at a 30.0. Looking at season 50 cast, we had a lot of departures, some veterans, some not. But the bottom of the list, like Emil Joaquim, 41.4, Devin Walker, 35.5. Those weren't terrible years. Longfellow, 44.4. We can talk about Chloe Trost and other people like that. But 30.0 after 15 episodes. I hate to say it. I'm rooting for Cam, but these are bad numbers, John. So where do we go from here? 5 left.
This is nothing personal. We like these people. It has nothing to do with that. It just has to do with what we're seeing on screen. These are just records of events. Cam is not cutting it at the show. Tommy is not cutting it at the show right now. It's 15 episodes in. We've seen enough of a sample size where we're hey, what you think is working maybe is not working, or maybe yourself it's not working. Now, we were saying this about Jane. Things can change. You have 5 episodes at least left to do something to change this. We will see what happens. I would not bet on it. I'm not seeing enough here from either of them. I mean, Cam's in a tough spot, right? There's an extreme lack of diversity in this cast where if Ego's still in the cast, does Cam do better? I think we got to be have some real talk here about that.
Yeah.
But so is he harmed by his environment? Probably. At the same time, is there a world in which he was able to translate his personality? Because I think he's a very funny guy. Is there a world where he's able to translate better onto the show than what we've been getting? Probably as well. So there is a lot of factors that come into play here when someone's at the bottom of the power rankings. I just don't know now that I see either of them being able to dig out of this hole.
And the color commentary here is this season has been more forgiving or lenient or encouraging to the rookies than any season we've done on this podcast. The opportunities for rookies and for the future players, for Jane and Ashley, has been so ripe for the taking that if you're not seizing them, I can't imagine how a Tommy and a Cam would look going against Pete, Beck, Kyle, or 80 Cecily, Kate. Those seasons that were so unforgiving to the Chloes and Bowens and the Andrews and Punkies and Laurens of those classes were so hard to break through. This season has been you show up and you can get in the Best Buy sketch. Tommy Brennan's all set. He can get into that sketch, but to get to a 60 or a 70 power ranking once in a while, you got to do it once in a while. So that's really my commentary.
There's also no place on this show for stand-ups, at all. If Jost and Shay are going to stay at the update desk until Lauren is no longer at the show, which I assume that's what's happening right now, what are we hiring them for? I mean, I've watched Tommy stand up. I think he's funny. I think Cam has this dynamic personality that I wish they were able to put in sketches. Like I've compared him to Tracy before, where I really think he pops when he's on screen. So like if they give him enough of a leash, like does he eventually figure it out? That's great. But like they are having a lot of trouble figuring out how to use stand-ups at the show. And like they must know, when you see Ashley Padilla popping the way that she is, when you see Jeremy Colhane popping the way that he has this season, you kind of look at it and you're like, this is a no-brainer to me. Like let's build this around sketch performers. And if one day there's an opening for a stand-up to really have a great place at the show, or a stand-up that maybe is like not full stand-up, but like mix stand-up sketch experience performer, then like that's the place to go for that.
And to go back to that segment about improving in that final quarter, which can be done and works, is that Punky Johnson, great friend of the show, huge Punky fans here, had a very poor stat season, but in the fourth quarter turned it around. Maya Rudolph's episode, Carrie Mulligan, Keegan-Michael Key, and Anya Taylor-Joy, Punky Johnson swung higher than she had all year. So it is possible. And, you know, Punky finished with, and I mention all the time how tough that season was, 23.8. That's lower than Cam Patterson. And Punky Johnson only came back for a second year, but got that upgrade. So it is possible, but we need Cam back on update to even talk about that. And at the end of the year, when we talk about this whole cast, is going into this season, Cam Patterson coming from the Kill Tony verse and having that type of dangerous aesthetic of what's he going to say, what's his brand, how's he going to translate to the cast. It could have gone completely differently, to be honest. We could have had a season where Cam Patterson is striking out 2 out of 3 and 1 out of 3 is hitting like an 80 or a 90, and we just haven't got it. So 5 more episodes to tell, but that's going to do it for the power rankings. John, as always, this has been a presentation of LateNighter.com. Tell us what's going up on the SNN. There's a lot going on here.
Yeah, a lot happening here. So I hope you've enjoyed this very long wrap up of this month of Saturday Night Live with Mike and I. It was a great time being with you here tonight, buddy.
Yeah, fewer guests, longer runtime.
That's okay. Yeah, you have to let us know if you like the show. If you like the show, tell us in the comments and what you thought of all our analysis here
subscribe.
tonight. But
leave a review.
Yes, please do subscribe so that you can show your support for our show. I appreciate it. All right. So yes, we mentioned it. SNL UK is premiering this Saturday night. So we're going to turn our attention to that this weekend, where we will have our first after show after the premiere of SNL UK. So I know that there's a lot of people who are going to be watching it at different times, with the, it showing up the next day on Peacock and Crave and wherever else you're watching the show. So we want to have our show available to as many people as possible. So here's the plan, is that the show will be airing at 10 p.m. UK time. It will air at our time on the East Coast here of North America at 6 p.m. So if you are watching the show live and you found a way to watch it, I can't necessarily tell you here on the podcast how to find a way to watch it live, but if you know your path, then go ahead and do that. And I hope you can join us for our live after show. So the show will run, they say, about a 75-minute runtime. I believe there's slightly less commercials. So I'm curious, Mike, we'll see how the runtime looks for the actual sketches next week. But the show should wrap up approximately 7:15 Eastern time. We will go live around 8 p.m. Eastern time, so around 45 minutes after the show, to talk through all of the sketches and the moments from the premiere. So even if you want to just hear what happened and to have that discussion with us, I hope you can join us on Saturday at 8. So that will be the first show that we'll do. We're going to see if that, works out well, and we'll try and do that for every single SNL UK episodes for these 6 that are happening in the spring. And then we won't have a roundtable next Monday, because we're going to be doing sort of this like hot take show roundtable blend on Saturday. So that makes sense for that spot. Next Wednesday night in this spot, Mike and I will be back again to talk through all of the numbers from the premiere. So Mike is going to be doing screen time for the 11 new cast members of SNL UK. Mike, are you excited to embark on this journey with all of our new friends?
It's going to be fun because, as we talked about in this podcast, we weren't there for the Carlin, Billy Preston, Janice Ian premiere October 75, but we are here for the March 26th premiere of SNL UK, and there's no data at all. It's a completely blank slate, so we don't know what we're going to see on the score sheet, and that first episode, first impressions, can mean a lot.
Yes, definitely. And I'll also say there's a question from Justin in the chat of if they're going to be dropping some of the sketches on YouTube. I'm being told that they are. I think the latest that I got for SNL UK, just going through my email quickly. This isn't great podcasting, but I'll just go through my email quickly that I got the latest from them a couple of days ago, where they said that Saturdays, there will be post-show clips sent out. So that, I think their plan is that they're going to sort of try and put out the sketches around the time that they go live or shortly after. So maybe that 45-minute buffer will be good if they're out on the Sky YouTube channel or Sky social media, that you guys can check some of them out if in case you're not watching live, and then join us on the show. So we're going to do our best with this. Bear with us, as it's a new show. We want to support it the best we possibly can. We also want to hear from you how you would like us to cover the show. So if there's anything we could do differently, then let us know, because we are here for the fans to help them enjoy the process of watching SNL UK. So would love to do that to the best of our ability. And Mike, like you said, I'm just so excited. I like starting from scratch on these things. Like, we have no records in the book for SNL UK. It's all going to start next week. And then we get to start having these debates of like, all right, who's succeeding at the show? Who's maybe, like, if they bring back for a season 2, like, what are you thinking? Are they going to cut it? Like, we get to talk about Tina. There's a lot of things that we'll get to talk about next week. And I hope to really enjoy this journey with you for the next couple of months as we cover both shows.
And we get to talk about, this cast member is doing really well, or, they're top 3 in the UK power ranking. Maybe they can cameo in the US, and, their name recognition can skyrocket. So there could be some crossover. We might see a Keenan cameo or a Marcelo cameo. Anything's possible, John. I can't wait to see it. And anything else, go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry, just want to say for the rest of the schedule. So that will be week number 1 of SNL UK. We'll obviously talk about the continuous schedule as we go on. Our feedback show that we're going to have, that I know some of the patrons were asking about, that will be taking place on Monday, March 30th. That will be the date of that one. So we will send out the form for that at the end of this week, so you can register for the feedback show. What we wanted to do was have the SNL US episodes to talk about, and as much SNL UK episodes that we can talk about at that time, to be able to like have fun and go through all of that. So it will be the Monday before the Jack Black episode, and that way we'll be able to have those conversations with all of the patrons. So look for that if you're searching on patreon.com/the SNL Network.
Absolutely. And I got to say, John, our social media has been killing it with the SNL UK. So if we can be the spot to house and host all that information, we'll gladly take the mantle, because this is a program that started with a love of SNL and will continue on that journey. So if you are enjoying that content, please hop on board with our other programming, because we welcome all the Brits here. Join the team. It's going to be a really fun ride, and I can't wait to see how it all shakes out with 6 episodes. It really is going to be a crazy time, as I said at the top of the show, to be covering SNL. John, patron program, anything?
We got our newsletter out as well on Patreon. So if you want to just join Patreon, but you're not ready to join one of the paid tiers, you could join completely for free, where Sammy K is working on a great newsletter that'll come out every single Friday. So you can check that out if you want to be up to date with the latest SNL news. He also posted like the schedule of upcoming podcasts. So you get like a bunch of really fun things in there. Sammy's awesome. So he's working hard on that one as well. And as I mentioned, feedback show coming out, and we'll be back with the season 31, 20 years later, look back in a couple of weeks. So there's like so many things that are happening here. The next like 2 months will be a grind, but I can't wait. As you said at the top of the show, Mike, is there a better time to be podcasting about Saturday Night Live? I don't think so.
There isn't. So with that being said, for Jon Schneider, I am Mike Murray of the SNN, and we will see you next time, everybody. Have a good one.